I'm gonna do something I don't normally do. And now I'm going to do something else that I don't normally do, which is cover a show that's still ongoing and debriefing about a single episode of it. For obvious reasons, I usually like to finish a show before I start talking about it or harping on a single episode, but I'm going to make a special exception for The Last of Us Season 2 here because the new episode, it's the big tuna. This is the episode everyone was wondering how the show would tackle it versus how it appeared in the game. There's no way I can talk about this without getting into spoilers. I'm not going to tiptoe around the subject here because I really want to get into the actual spaghetti and meatballs of it, so this is your spoiler warning for both the show and The Last of Us 2. I'm also going to quickly spoil the secret to optimal hygiene. It's Cheeky Soap. If you shower with Cheeky Soap, it is going to elevate your hygiene to a level you thought unachievable by mortals. It's soap that we made specifically for me because of my psoriasis, and I wanted soap that made me feel better getting out of the shower as opposed to feeling like fucking SpongeBob when he had no water. So we came up with Cheeky, and it's available now. It's been available since November, and people are absolutely loving it. You will love it too, I guarantee it. You go to usecheeky.com and get some soap. Let's go ahead and start with the game. Many of you might recall that I was pretty outspoken on my opinion of The Last of Us 2's story, much to the chagrin of quite a few Last of Us fans that were eager to throw those tomatoes at me and treat my ass like a spittoon for my take. But I stand by it. I think all of the story beats in The Last of Us 2 were really solid. The problem for me was the order in which you experienced them. I felt that was detrimental. I've never had any problem with their decision to kill Joel. It's not like he was some angel, some sinless being, a gift from God bestowed upon that cursed world to look after every man, woman, and child. He was a character who did unforgivable, fucked up things, and at the end of the day, this is something that he had coming. But the issue arises with the way they handled it by having this character we hadn't seen before, Abby, coming out of nowhere, like from the fucking top turnbuckle here with a jump scare, killing Joel so early into the game without any explanation as to why she did it, and then you spend the next 10 or 11 hours starting to understand where she's coming from, why she did this. And I think that it would have been better served, and this is what I said back then, if the order was changed where you did get to know a little bit more about it, and all, so that way it builds up to it more so it doesn't feel like it's there for the sake of shock. I'll stop just, blabbering on about it. I'm not here to just deliver a yappy meal again on The Last of Us 2's story. But the reason I say this is because the show did pretty much exactly what I said I think would have been better for the game in regards to Abby's character, where she isn't just like this random person who comes and kills Joel and, traumatizes everyone out of nowhere here, with this crazy fucking RKO. Instead, the show does flesh her out and her motivations. You see why she's doing it, and I do think that helps in Joel's death. I think it makes the scene a little better. The show does change quite a bit about how all of this played out versus the game, some for the better, some for the worse. I do think that decision to have Abby be more fleshed out, so when it gets to this point, you do understand it more. It makes it more possible to empathize with her position, with what has happened to her because of Joel, versus in the game where it takes like another 10 hours before it starts to be like, well, no, I can see where Abby was coming from. So for me, I do think that was a positive thing that the show changed. And we'll just stay with positives. Another thing I think the show did really well is they had this huge attack on Jackson. Thousands of infected trying to breach the walls as the citizens of Jackson do their best to push them back. There's a bloater there. It's a really, really good action sequence. It reminded me of something out of like Game of Thrones. And all of that attack on Jackson by this massive horde of infected does not happen in the game. And I think it's a really cool set of scenes. It shows very clever usage of like all the resources Jackson has, and it's a great battle. And I think that was wonderful. It was really fun to watch. But it came with a caveat. There was something about it I didn't like, and it's that Tommy was there. You see, in the game, I didn't mean to drop like a Darman on you there with the UC, but in the game, Tommy was with Joel. Whereas in the show, Tommy is now at Jackson defending it from these infected. And he's badass there. I think it's really cool, and it gets to showcase, like, no, he is also like an extreme elite, ass clapper. That's great. But since Tommy is no longer with Joel when Abby is confronting him, We no longer have that extremely sad scene of Tommy witnessing Joel get hit with the shotgun, and he immediately recognizes what's about to happen. Freaks out, and then he gets knocked out, so he doesn't actually like witness Joel's death, but he knows. And I really feel like that made that scene even more sad, because not only did Ellie witness it, but Tommy was there too. And in the show, Tommy is not there. Instead, it's Dina that's with Joel. And I just don't think that hits as hard, because in the show, Dina just gets put to sleep. They give her a shot that knocks her out for an hour. Like, she still sees it start, knows what's going to happen, and then gets put to sleep. So it's not super dissimilar from Tommy getting knocked out, but I just don't feel like the relationship between Joel and Dina is nearly as powerful as brothers. You know, Joel and Tommy being present when all of that's about to happen. It just made it all the more sad. And I just don't think it was as powerful with Dina being there instead. Now, the execution itself plays out pretty similar to the way it does in the game. They still use the golf club for the old Joel in 1. It is pretty close with a couple of small changes there. Some of them I really think were a downgrade. Like in the game, you might remember Joel has like a really badass line about just go ahead and say whatever speech you rehearsed and get this over with. They took that out here, which I really think was a misstep, because that was a very strong line in the game. Instead, here they replace it with something kind of similar, same DNA, where he says, just shut the fuck up and do it already. And like, while they're similar, I just think the line from the game feels more badass to me. It's just a tiny little nitpick, but I wanted to mention it. And then a couple of other things change a little bit, because Abby in the show is not like jacked like she is in the game. So they change how that plays out here to a certain extent. So like, she's punching Joel a ton of times, but since she doesn't have, fucking anchor arms, it's not like she's caving his skull in with every impact. And then it eventually ends with her stabbing through his skull. But I do think that the way that Abby learned that the person that saved her life was Joel was done better in the show than in the game. So Joel's identity is revealed similarly in the game and the show, where Abby is on the run from some infected and Joel saves her life. They're then, scrambling to survive together, and during the scramble, she learns this stranger's name is Joel. In the game, it happens when Joel, Tommy, and Abby run away. They block a door, and Tommy just directly, stares at Abby and says, "I'm Tommy, that's Joel." She connects the dots. Joel then also reveals himself as well, just like fucking hog wild saying, "I'm Joel," which I just really feel like that's something you wouldn't do as Joel, or really Tommy in that position, knowing just how many enemies they have. I was never really a huge fan of the way Abby learned that information, to be honest, but in the show, I think it's done much smarter, where after Joel saves Abby and they, flee, Dina calls out to Joel wondering where he is. She just calls out, "Joel!" And Joel responds, and then that's when Abby connects it. This is Joel. Dina didn't know he was with anyone. She didn't know where he was. She was just calling out to try and locate him. A very natural, normal thing to do, call out that person's name. But since Abby was there, which Dina was not privy to, Abby gets that name. So overall, I actually thought it was a really good episode, all things considered. It did a lot of what the game did. Some it did better, some it did worse. But my main criticism of Season 2 so far, and it's what I talked about after Season 1 aired, is I really do think they probably should have recast Ellie. Bella Ramsey does a really great job, and in Season 1, I thought it was fantastic all around. But Season 2 is set 5 years after Season 1, and since it's still Bella Ramsey playing Ellie, Ellie still looks the same as she did in Season 1, even though she's supposed to have gone from a child to a young adult. So I just think that even though Bella Ramsey is still delivering a great performance, it would have just been better if you had recast Ellie, so that way it does actually seem like time did pass. Because right now, since it's still Bella Ramsey playing that character, it looks like it's still the same child Ellie from Season 1 now in Season 2. Anyway, though, I'll start to wrap up. I'm very curious to see where the rest of the season goes, because there are some pretty big things that are different in the show versus the game. I imagine it's still going to follow the same blueprint, but it is going in different directions in certain ways. Especially with Jackson. I'm very curious what they're going to do now post-infected siege. Because they lost a ton of people there. It was a huge fucking all-out, nuts-to-butts battle against the infected. Tommy was there as opposed to with Joel. So I'm just really wondering how the rest of Season 2 is going to shake down. Obviously, the meat and potatoes are still going to be revenge. Ellie out to kill Abby by any means necessary. But I am just wondering how the rest is going to unfold with the differences here. So, anyway, that's about it. See ya.